Welcome to the Herald Democrat Sports Podcast. I'm the sports editor of the Herald Democrat, Jason Della Rosa, and you're listening to another season of the Herald Democrat Sports Podcast. We are returning for the 2024 football season. We have plenty of storylines. We have plenty of things to talk about. We will do it every week, starting with this preseason preview and going until the last team is standing. In the last couple of years, we have done right up until Christmas because we have had a team play for a state championship. And all along the way, we will talk about the ups and the downs, the wins and the losses, the great performances, and everything that Texoma has to offer when it comes to the football season. For those of you who are just joining us, we do this every week. It will come out usually on Wednesday night, so that you have a chance to listen before the games, either Thursday or Friday, because as has become the norm for our 14 schools here in Grayson County, especially when they involve Frisco schools. We do have several games throughout the season on Thursday, so we want to give you guys plenty of time to listen before those games kick off. So you can find it on my Twitter or X, as we'll still call it Twitter because it's Twitter to me. At Jason Della Rosa is the handle. I will post the link on there. It's also on our social media for Facebook, whether it's the Herald Democrat page or the All-Texomaland page. The All-Texomaland page is strictly high school sports related. So if you want to find anything that's going on just in the high school sports landscape for Texoma, that's the place to get it. But we also post it on the regular Herald Democrat Facebook page as well. And like I said, usually those are posted early evening on Wednesday. And the format is very simple. This one obviously is the preview podcast. We'll talk about the teams getting ready for their first games, and then starting after week one, you get a recap of what happened and what is about to happen for the next week's game. We start from the biggest schools, we work our way down, especially when we get into district, when we go district by district, and then non-district is kind of a free-for-all based on local matchups, interesting matchups, all that sort of stuff. We'll get you all covered. There's always stuff in the actual paper, little preview capsules for every game each week. There's obviously preview stories, whether it's Sherman, whether it's Denison. Some other teams will get mixed in along the way as well. And that's what you're gonna get. So we invite you to listen every week. Usually it's about an hour. I try to keep it to an hour, depending on how many games we have. And that's kind of what things are like here on the podcast. So without further ado, we'll kick off this season preview / week one preview for the 2024 season. And there is no better place to start, as it has become tradition in week one, the Battle of the Axe between Sherman and Denison. This is the 126th version of the Battle of the Axe. It is at Denison this year. At 7 o'clock on Friday at Munson Stadium. And Denison has won this 11 straight years. It has become the broken record of this matchup for the last decade plus. This is the longest winning streak that Denison has had. It is the second longest unbeaten streak in the series. Sherman does hold the record. There is a tie in there because it dates back to a time when we did have ties. Before the overtime did not exist, and so there is a tie within that the long winning streak that Sherman had. But Denison has won 11 in a row. Last year was a 42-0 win, and it was unexpected as a final score. A lot of these games have been close. A lot of these games have been close at halftime. and into the third quarter. This was no exception. This game was 14-0 at halftime. Sherman was getting the ball to start the second half, and obviously if they go down and score, and then it's 14-7, and you say game on. But Denison was able to get a 3 and out to start the second half. Went down and scored, and was able to pull away for the lopsided finish. A lot of the same pieces, especially for Sherman in this game. They're bringing back basically every skill position. You have, you say it all starts with the quarterback spot. You have a guy coming back for a second year in K.O. Moore. You have a tandem in the backfield with Jacavian Hughes and Kane Bowen, who are the top rushers from last year. You have your top 4 receivers in Micah Hunt, Randy Nelson, Colby Ray Short, and Colin Macon. So the weapons are there. They had their ups and downs last year. I mean, obviously, you look at what they started out with in this game. It did not go well. And then they started to find their footing, obviously, in a tough Frisco district against some really good teams. But that whole group is back. All those skill guys are back. The question on the offense is on the offensive line. They are replacing 4 starters. Injuries hurt that group early last year. They had to make some changes. And so the group that's coming back this year is some guys that were battling for spots, some guys that earned some spots, at the start of in the spring or at the start of camp. So that's the question on the offensive side of the ball is, can this offensive line come together quickly so that these guys that are expected to make plays after the experience of last year and the progression that they made, are they able to put it all together? Because I think this has a chance to be a really good offense for Sherman. And there are you look on the other side for the offense for Denison. They have a quarterback back as well in Ty Rhodes, who made his first start last year, or first year as a starter for Denison last year. They do have some other guys back, but there are some key pieces missing. The problem when you talk about Denison last year with key pieces missing is that injuries really hurt them after this game, because their leading rusher, who ended up being Jack Allman, who graduated, he missed a chunk of time due to injury. The guy who was their leading receiver 2 years ago, who was expected to be their leading receiver, Kyson Lusain, he got hurt after this game, to where he tried to come back and then was unable to. So he played very sparingly last year, and so you had some guys fill in who have some decent experience. Jalen Butler is a guy in the backfield who fit in really well when Allman was sidelined. He doesn't have the overall numbers because obviously he didn't have a lot of touches and carries until late in the season. And it looks like Dennis is going to go with this two-headed monster in the backfield with Butler and Thomas Rendon, who's played a lot of receiver last year. But obviously, so now that takes away from the receiving a spot from the receivers. I think there's going to be some new guys there. And I think when you look at Denison as well, they have an offensive line that lost 4 starters as well. Jackson Bridges is back at center, but the guys around him are going to be new. And so that's obviously another storyline to this, as well as you have 2 offensive lines that are trying to be at full go right away because of what this game is, and it may come down to who has done that the best, who does not commit penalties, who has the better chemistry, working together, going against some pretty good defenses. So that's where the offenses stand in this game. Defensive wise, I think you're on. I don't want to say equal footing, but similar footing in that both sides had to replace some key guys. There's not one particular area where you say, oh, the whole group is gone per se. I think you can say that both teams have guys at each level or multiple starters back at each level, to where there's not a huge change, but there are a couple of areas where that could be some concern. If you look at the Sherman side, I think linebacker is obviously the place to start. You have, and this is obviously because you're going to have some guys going both ways. But if you look at Sherman from a linebacking perspective, you have a guy there in Kane Bowen, who's already committed to UTEP as a linebacker. So you have, obviously, he's a guy who's been contributing since he was for a couple years now at that spot. Has been a main guy there. Mike Collins is a guy who jumped into the fray last year on the defensive line, and he's actually moving back a level for his senior year, and he really flashed a lot up front. And Micah Hunt is going to be playing a lot of linebacker as well. He was more of an offensive guy last year, but just in those three guys, you have some really good athletes. I think when all's said and done, you're going to have Micah Hunt looking to be is a Division I athlete. I think maybe he leans more towards the offensive side because of what he can do at receiver as a big target. But obviously, like I said, you could have two D1 talents, and obviously a guy in Collins who probably going to play at a very good level at the next in college as well. So that's if anything, that's a strength. They have depth there, and that's always key when you're dealing with guys potentially going both ways and having to carry that load. You can see that in the secondary where Colby Ray Short's back there at the safety spot. And so he's obviously on the field for a lot of plays, not just on offense, defense, but obviously he's a threat in the return game and on special teams. And so that's they've got guys there where you look and you say, okay, this is a 3-year starter or a 4-year contributor or something along those lines, just based on what they've done. If there, like I said, there are some questions. They've got some openings in the secondary after graduation last year. And if they get those guys in the right spots, I think for this game that may not be an issue. Because from a passing standpoint, because Denison has always been more of a running team, but down the line, if those guys win the battles that are out there, and talking about projected starters and all that sort of stuff, it's been looked at that there are some guys back there that are there's a battle to get snaps, and so we'll see what happens there. And I think when you talk about the Denison defense, linebacker is also a good place to start, because they bring back a pair of 3-year starters in Lathan Bailey and Roman Henderson. Obviously, two of the biggest plays in last year's game were by Bailey, on defense, returning a fumble and an interception for touchdowns. that really highlighted the defensive effort that Denison had last year. But outside of them, again, you have guys at both levels, or excuse me, at all three levels, besides the linebacker position that are multiple year starters, have made plays. You talk about up front, Josh Turner as a defensive lineman, as a defensive tackle specifically, who's a first team all district guy. Causing problems in the middle of the line. In the secondary, you have a guy like Caden Sanders, who kind of has been a safety nickel guy, move him around type of guy, who's gonna lock down a spot at corner now. And then some guys who were younger guys last year, but are also back, at their spots. Trace Olson at safety, last year as a sophomore was the district defensive newcomer of the year, or sharing that honor. At defensive end, Jason Cannon, started to really make some noise as a sophomore. And so again, you have a group where there's a couple spots, where there are battles. There's the other end spot is open. There's some spots in the secondary, for some guys. And there may be some young guys out there trying to earn some starting spots. And we'll see how that all comes together. But I think, for people who have listened the last couple of years on the podcast, it's interesting to talk about this streak because one, it has continued, it's lasted this long, and a lot of the games kind of go the same way, to where the first half is close. It's been close into the third quarter, and they all end up in Denison wins, and a lot of times it's Denison pulling away in that second half. We haven't had a game where it's basically been over at halftime. Like I said, you look at last year's score and you see 42-0, you're like, oh, this was never a game. I said it was only 14-0 at halftime. Denison Sherman has had the lead a couple of times in the last 5 years. Going in at halftime, they've been ahead. They've had a lead early in the third quarter, and then things have changed. And I think the biggest thing for when this streak ends, because it is going to end at some point, is that Sherman is able to put behind some of these recent situations. They're able to not dwell on, oh, here we go again, or things aren't going our way, or we had a bad drive, or they had a good, Denison had a good drive, and from here on out it's everything is switched. But I understand this is how the streak gets that way, is that it's that that death loop of it just keeps happening over and over again, and you can never get out of it. And how do you have a different expectation when you have guys that have played in this game, if this is their second or third, or even their fourth year to play in this game, that the outcome on the Sherman side has never changed. They don't have anybody that's experienced a victory in this game, and at some point you're going to have that side is going to come into this game having won it at some point, but until it happens, it's so hard for that to break through. And I think that's part of what this recent streak has been about. But again, also it's been competitive, and I think this year is another year where you kind of go in and you say, I think it's going to be competitive, just based on whether what one side has returning or what one side doesn't. Obviously, with this big senior group for Sherman, with all these guys at all these positions, it's they have all this experience, and you think that it's going to happen. But again, you could say the same thing about a lot of the guys on the Denison side, and you have a group that does not want to be the first team to lose to Sherman. And the fact that it's always now the first game has totally changed the way to handicap how this game is going to go. For those listening who do remember, this used to be, when I first started here, this used to be the last game of the season. It was always the last game, and you always knew going in what teams' records were. I would say, the people that there are going to be people that start in this game who may not be starters by the end of the season, just because things happen along the way and there's injuries and people just get better with experience and the opportunity, and so it's very hard now to figure out what this game is going to look like, whereas in the past you kind of knew, okay, maybe this is the better team, or the two teams have similar records, and obviously they were in the same district, so you could compare scores of, well, who played who better, or who are the other teams wins. Did they both beat the same team? Did somebody beat the one team and somebody lost to another team? It's so hard with the first game to know what you're going to get. And I do think, like I said, it has been, all these first halves have been competitive. Denison has obviously proven themselves to be the better team in the second half. And if Sherman's going to end that streak, they're going to have to find a way to withstand that. That run that seems to happen, sometime in the third quarter, that kind of breaks things open. If they're able to keep it close, obviously, that puts, I feel, the pressure on Denison, because like I said, you don't want to be the guy on the team that has this streak end, and if it's close, especially going into the fourth quarter, then Sherman has every reason to think, if they either have the lead or if they're down by a touchdown or 3 or 4 points, with a chance to take the lead, then all the pressure's on Denison to keep that streak going, and so we'll see what happens. But it's always exciting to see these two teams play, and obviously once they it's a quick turnaround after this, because they each have one other non-district game, and then they go right into their districts because of how realignment worked. And obviously once we get into district play, we'll talk about those districts. But it's they've got 2 games to get ready for district. This happens to be one of them, and we'll definitely see what happens in the 126th Battle of the Axe between Sherman and Denison, at Denison, 7:00 on Friday night at Munson Stadium. The next game we'll talk about, we do have a couple all local games to open the season, which is really exciting to see. And one of those is actually going to be the very first game of the 2024 football season for us. That's Collinsville at Tioga, because they are playing on Thursday night at 7:00 in Tioga, and this is, I guess this is now a thing. Last year they played on Thursday. For those who remember last year, when it was basically a giant heat wave, which you could say every week is a giant heat wave in Texas, but it was really bad this time last year. Looking like on Friday night that temperatures were going to hit 104, 105. The Battle of the Axe and some other games actually got pushed back start time wise, just because to try to let the sun set a little further before kickoff, so people were not sitting in that heat for as long as possible. And Collinsville and Tioga said, we're going to move our game to Thursday to get it off Friday, to try to beat the heat that was supposed to come in. And they liked it so much that they decided, hey, since we're going to keep this little neighboring rivalry going, let's keep it on Thursday. So that's actually going to kick off the season. I'm going to be at that one before I do Battle of the Axe on Friday. And last year, Collinsville won 48-20. And both teams went on to have really good years. Obviously, Collinsville returned to the region final, went 12-2 again before losing to the eventual champion in Albany again. Tioga ended up going 9-4. and they made the region semifinals. That's their best season since they moved up to the 11-man ranks in 2018. That was the first year for Coach Zach Birdwell. And he jumped right in. We talked last year about he's an air raid guy. You throw the ball around a bunch, and Tioga took advantage. You obviously you look at some of the losses that they had. This being one of them, they weren't too to bad teams. They had a loss in overtime, where they went for a 2-point conversion to try to win it. They ended up coming up short, but losing to Collinsville last year obviously was obviously not a bad loss. Losing to Marlin, who went to the region final by beating Tioga. So 2 of the 4 losses were to state quarterfinalists. But this is a different Collinsville team. Also, they graduated a lot of those guys. Logan Jenkins was a record-setting quarterback. You had all these receivers that, as part of that big senior class, Carter Scott, Colin Barnes, Rylan Newman, just putting up huge numbers every week. Didn't matter who was the receiver. And the defense was really good too. A lot of these guys are two-way guys. Reed Patterson, obviously, was an all-state defensive safety. They basically put together 2 of the best seasons in school history back to back. But it was such a big collective group of those seniors. They're all gone now. Tioga had losses too, particularly at the quarterback spot in Hayden Hilliard. But they've got a lot of the other guys around the quarterback returning. They're very deep at receiver. Austin Norwood, Sam Mott, Slade Babbitt, all these guys basically been contributing for 3 if not 4 years. It's a group that jumped in young, got a lot of experience, and they've kind of ridden that all the way through. They've got 2 guys at the running back spot, Jonathan Hernandez and Gage Anderson. And Anderson's kind of a multi utility guy. He can catch the ball, he can run the ball, be a threat in a lot of areas. So they've got the weapons around the quarterback. We just don't know who that's going to be. There was a battle going into the season between Cole Boyd and Rocky Urich. They could split time early if a decision has not been made. And again, when I talked to Coach Birdwell, before the scrimmages and doing the preview and everything, he said he wouldn't have a problem, giving them both a shot, whether it's in the scrimmages, whether it's in the non-district, because obviously the district is the most important stuff to try to figure out who the guy might be. So it'll obviously be interesting to see who gets the start, and if there is I don't want to say necessarily a rotation, but to see how that plays out, and if somebody has actually won the starting job. But it's a fun way to start the season to have these 2 local teams. It's the 5th straight year that they've played. They used to be in the same district, and then Collinsville dropped down to 2A Division II. But they decided to keep playing each other, to keep this rivalry going. So, obviously big things are expected at Tioga. At the very least, I think they're capable of, winning a district championship. Again, last year they tied for it. I think, they think obviously that they have a chance to win it outright, have a chance to make another good run. And then, Collinsville's got, it's going to be interesting to see. Jackson Jenkins is taking over for his brother at quarterback. He got some playing time last year, because a lot of their games were lopsided, so it's not like he's being thrown into the fire immediately as a sophomore. He did get some time, and he's got some experience at a high level in another sport, obviously helping the baseball team win the state championship as a freshman. So he had some big moments especially in the playoffs to help them get to state and then at state as well. So yes, it's a different sport, but obviously he's been in some pressure situations, and the question is going to be can Collinsville reload and not have to rebuild based off of what they lost. Now they're probably still the favorite in that district to win it, but obviously they've got a tough schedule. They've got some good opponents. And it's going to be interesting to see if, like I said, if it's a reload instead of a rebuild. And we'll get to see that right away on Thursday at 7 o'clock. Collinsville going to Tioga for that one. And the other all-local matchup that we have, another good one. Like I said, I really enjoy seeing some of our better local teams playing each other. I know that's difficult sometimes because a lot of times people are in the same district. But this is another great one with Pottsboro taking on Bells. That game is at Bells. And again, you have two of the teams right now that are among the best in their respective districts, divisions. Obviously in the area, two of the better programs. Pottsboro went 9-3 last year. Bells went 9-2. This is a fun one to start off with, for both of them. This is actually, I didn't realize this when I was putting things together. So the last time they played was 2007. So it's been a while. They did play, I don't want to say somewhat regularly before that. Obviously, there's some district stuff mixed in there and all that sort of stuff. But the last time, for anybody that wants to keep this note, the last time Bells beat Pottsboro was in 1997. And again, you have two teams with big expectations, based on the realignment, based on how things are going. Obviously, both expecting to challenge for a district title. Bells is in a tough situation, obviously, because they're with Gunner in their district once again. They finished second to Gunner the last 4 years. And Pottsboro is moving into a new district. Part of that new district is Whitesboro, and some of the Dallas area schools. But again, I think Pottsboro thinks they're in the mix there. And then when you look at these teams, I think the big question for both of them is they have some key offensive pieces in the running game that are missing, and how does that affect the plan going forward? For Bells, obviously running slot T, they always have several guys. It seems every year somebody pops out and like, whoa, where'd that guy come from? And it's just sort of the assembly line of running backs over there with what they do. They did lose one guy to graduation in Hayden Allen. They did lose another guy who was an all-state guy in Easton Helgen, who's now at Whitewright. And so there are two spots to fill instead of the one that they thought. They do have Bryson Thompson back. He was the third part of that trio last year. And it's to see who's going to step in along the lines with him in the backfield is going to be interesting. Obviously, Bryson Wright's a guy who is going to get who was going to get a much bigger role, and now he's going to get an even bigger role. Instead of maybe being the third guy, to go all the way up into to be the second fiddle, in this offense now. But Tucker Kreitz is a guy who has experience there. Peyton Washburn, Jackson Brown is a sophomore. They always have guys, and they always seem to find somebody who contributes. That maybe you looked at last year at the varsity level and they were a backup or something. So that's obviously going to be key for them to keep that machine running. They've won 9 games, at least 9 games every year. for the whole stretch of the Coach Dale West there. The last 5 years, they've won 9 games, literally exactly 9 games in 4 of those years, and the other time they won 10. They've made the region semifinals when 3 of the last 4. Obviously they're trying to break through to get to a region final, and obviously thinking obviously that'd be a rematch with Gunner. And so they have to deal with that on their offense, and then obviously if you're Pottsboro, you can't talk about Pottsboro last season. The first thing that's gonna pop into everyone's mind is Major McBride, who had an absolutely monster year. One of the best in the state, obviously recognized as an all-state guy, which you would expect when you run for over 2,700 yards and 48 touchdowns, and you add 28 catches for 500 plus yards, a couple touchdowns there, 283 carries in 12 games. That's a lot of carries, and so he's no longer the safety net. He's no longer the bell cow. He's no longer the focal point of everybody coming in to face Pottsboro. So it's going to look a little different. And I think they're going to, Coach Poe said they're going to enter the game or enter the season sort of with a by committee-ish situation, I think, to start. I think they've got some guys, Carson Nix, Matt Wise, that can kind of obviously not put up those massive numbers, but can handle the position together. I think this is going to put a lot more responsibility on Caden Humphrey, who won a battle to be the starting quarterback as a sophomore, and had a pretty good season. Throw for 1,300, almost 1,400 yards, ran for over 600 yards, averaged almost 6 yards a carry, was second team all district. But he didn't have to go beyond what they asked him to, because the guy in the backfield with him was really good, and it's an offense that scored at least 28 points in every game, scored in the mid 30s and up in all but 3 of those games. They averaged almost 500 yards, but they ran for about 320 a game. So it's going to look different, and the question is how fast can those adjustments be made? And it's a good testing ground for both of these teams, kind of to get a sense of where they are early. And it's another one of those games where the loser is not in trouble. The loser is going to probably have a pretty stinking good year no matter what. And I think that's what you get out of seeing matchups like this is, and it's a matchup I think a lot of people want to see because of how good these teams have been, in the last 5 or so years. They're always in the hunt, and they've made some deep runs, and they've had really good players. So going to be interesting to see this other local matchup between Pottsboro and Bells at 7:30 on Friday night. Rest of the games all involving local teams, but it's just the one-sided nature of it. The next game we'll talk about, Van Alstyne is hosting Life Waxahachie at 7:30 on Friday. Van Alstyne's another one of those. We talk about what Bells has done the last 5 or so years. Van Alstyne's kind of been in that same mode. They moved up to 4A. It's crazy that it's been as long as it's been. This is year 5 of them being in 4A. They continue to grow down there, and they've been continued to be successful. At the 4A level. They they win 7 games. They got to the second round of the playoffs again last year. Unfortunately, the way the bracket's set up, they got stuck facing East Texas Power Carthage, who eliminated them for the second straight year. But again, they've been consistently competitive in their district. They finished second in the district for the second straight year, and that was their only loss was to Aubrey. Aubrey is now moving up to 4A Division I, and a lot of the districts stayed the same. So Van Alstyne's coming into the season thinking, why not us? Why shouldn't we assume the mantle as the front runner, as the potential district champion, based on the fact that of the success we've had against everybody else except for Aubrey the last couple of years. Now again, changes at Van Alstyne. Obviously, quarterback spots always the number one place to start for a situation like that. Weston Johnson has graduated. Brady Carson is going to move over into the full-time role there at quarterback. But again, you look at them and you see a lot of guys or several guys back. I don't say a lot of guys back, but especially in the passing game, Castor Fonseca, Braden Miller. They've got guys with experience from last year. Obviously, Brady Carson would have been one of those guys. Jackson Skinner. They've got. They can start guys across the board at receiver. That had either starting experience last year or played a lot because of how they did their offense. The big question is obviously at the quarterback spot. But you got to, Coach Miller said, we take what we think is our best athlete or a really good athlete. We put him there and makes the plays. He's got some experience there as well, and I think they've got a chance. I think they're obviously a playoff team in that district. But like I said, the question is, can you somehow avoid what has been the tough spot of finishing second and dealing with Carthage? And this is obviously a good chance to get some guys' feet wet on both sides of the ball. You're playing a team in Life Waxahachie that went 2-8 last year. Their last winning season was 2019. That's also the last time they made the playoffs. And so again, I think it's a good jumping off point to kind of get the feelers out there, see what you have at some spots. And this was another group. I think particularly on defense where there were guys that Coach Miller said, we're battling for some position spots, or you have a position grouping where there's 4 guys for 3 spots or that sort of thing, and they're gonna have some guys go both ways. So it's an early situation where you can kind of ease into your schedule, get ready for district, and kind of see where things fit. So again, you don't want to pencil them in just because they've won 7 games every year except for one since 2016. But again, that's kind of what they've done down there. They've been very consistent, and I think as long as they do what they think they can do offensively, I said I think they'll be in a really good spot, not just to make the playoffs, but to potentially win the district down there at Van Alstyne, hosting Life Waxahachie at 7:30 on Friday night to kick off their season. Next game, as we move down into some of the 3A teams that are playing, we'll go next to Whitesboro. Whitesboro will be hosting Paris North Lamar on Friday night at 7:30. You have a Whitesboro team that is going to have some new faces and some young faces. There's only a handful of seniors. I think it's 8 is the number there. There's a chance that there's a lot of sophomores that could see the field. There's some of those kids last year as freshmen saw the field towards the end of the season. And there's a good sophomore class there. Despite a lot of graduation that they had from 2 years ago, when they made back-to-back state quarterfinals before losing to district rival Brock. Obviously coming off those two best seasons in school history. Last year's team, everybody I thought was going to overlook them. Obviously you're still in the same district with Brock. Paradise was supposed to have a really good year, which they did. Excuse me. And I think maybe people were starting to overlook Whitesboro, and they still end up making the playoffs. They still end up getting to the second round, finishing at 6-6. And I think you don't want to put all the pressure on them about the future and where they could go or whatever. But this sort of looks like the group that got to those region finals in a row, from the standpoint of that group grew up together. They had a lot of sophomores, and they didn't make the playoffs. They went 4-6 when they were sophomores, but they learned and they figured it out, and they all came back and they got better when they were juniors and seniors to pull off those two runs, and maybe history is able to repeat itself. It's going to be interesting. Obviously, again, I feel like a broken record, but we talk about the quarterback position. This is a battle here between two sophomores. So that's obviously interesting that you have two guys in the same class that are going to be battling. You have one who is trying to get the varsity experience for the first time in Rip Harper, and you have one who got some experience last year in Colt Fagan. As a freshman, kind of he got some time back there playing some other positions. Being a backup, but then also getting just to be on the varsity and get all that sort of stuff. So and again, this is another situation where until somebody wins the job, it's not a problem to play them both to figure out who wins it. But again, they have some weapons. I think there's a chance, running back might be, a by committee situation as well, because it's first time guys, taking over for Max Parker, who graduated, and had a really good season. So there's some inexperience there, but you have some guys in the secondary, at the wideout spot, in Braden Bomar and Mason Scarborough. Wyatt Winchester was a guy who played a little bit down the stretch. So they've got some guys there. It's going to be interesting to see offensive line. There's the probability that they start three sophomores on the line. So again, this is one of those years where again, I think maybe people might be overlooking them. They see some of the pieces that graduated last year, and you go, oh well, there's no way they're going to keep this thing going. But again, it's a new district. We'll see what happens with that. But I think this if we're talking about this in a couple years, we may be talking about, hey, remember when Whitesboro started, I don't know, throwing out a number, started 9 sophomores a couple years ago, and here they are, kicking down doors and beating up people because they've got all this experience and they've grown up together to put it together. So I'm interested to see like I said, how things go, and North Lamar is sort of one of those teams. They play a lot of our schools here in Texoma. They had their best year last year since 2015, going 5-5. 2014 was the last time they actually had a winning record. And so again, I think it's a good first game to kind of see where Whitesboro's at. They've got some tough ones coming up. They're going to play Bells next week. I think they've got Graham the week after that. If it's not the week after that, it's to end non-district play. So this will be an interesting start to kind of see how things are shaking out down there at Whitesboro with all these young guys. So I'm interested to see what happens there. when Whitesboro hosts North Lamar, 7:30 on a Friday night. Next up, we'll talk about the Gunner Tigers, the two-time defending 3A Division II state champions. They are going to host Houston Kincaid, which is a private school, obviously out in Houston. And you're saying, why is Gunner playing a team in Houston? And I will say it's the same reason that they're also playing Anna and Salina in non-district play, because nobody wants to play Gunner these days if you don't have to. And I can understand why most people would feel that way. They've won back-to-back state championships. They've won 31 games in a row. It's the longest streak in the state. But having these back-to-back undefeated seasons, and unfortunately you get to realignment and nobody wants to play you, and you're struggling to find some games, and you found somebody in this private school, down in Houston that's willing to come up here and play you on Friday night at 7:30. They are I don't know a whole lot about them. Obviously, they don't even play in. People around here might be familiar with TAPS because of Texoma Christian and a lot of teams that they play at the lower levels at TAPS. This is a team that competes in the Southwest Preparatory Conference. So it's like its own little thing. They compete at the 4A level there. I don't know a whole heck of a lot about them. They went 7-4 last year. So they're obviously they're a pretty good team in that respect. I'm not really sure what they have coming back, but they had a pretty decent year last year. But with Gunner, one, I don't think anybody looks, we're at the point now with Gunner where you don't look at what they do at the start or near the start or in district. It's all about what the end result's going to be. Obviously, a lot of people, regardless of the fact that they're playing these bigger schools, whether it's Kincaid, obviously Anna, who won the 4A state Division I state championship and then moved up to 5A, whether it's Salina, who has been making some deep runs in the 4A Division I playoffs. They could lose all those games. They could be 0-3, and I don't think anybody's going to worry or fret or go, oh my God, what's wrong with Gunner? Because it's about getting into the playoffs, and then are you going to find a way to potentially three-peat? And everybody still thinks that, if you look at 3A Division II, you look at all the projections, you look at all the rankings, there are people who are, have Gunner as the best team, are projecting Gunner to go, whether it's either to win the region again or play in the championship game again or win the whole thing again. So the biggest thing for them is can they fill the holes of some guys last year? And, you hate to say, well, yes, they're going to, because that's basically what it's been since this run started in 2016. I think every year we've gotten to the point where you go, well, how are they going to replace this guy? And how can they fill the shoes of this guy? And how is this guy going to be able to fill in now that he's starting? And ever since this run started, they've always gotten to at least the state semifinals. They've won 4 championships in that time, and guys continue to just step right in and fill the shoes. So you have a quarterback situation. How do you replace a guy who was second team All-State, was the offensive MVP of the championship game, and never lost as a starter, who would throw for 2,000 yards and ran for 1,000 yards and had a hand in 30-something touchdowns, and would have been had a lot crazier stats if the scores weren't so lopsided, and Walker Overman. How do you replace a defensive lineman who was All-State in Braden Hinton? How do you replace one of the best receivers you've had in your school history, who was third team All-State in Cannon Lindbergh? How do you replace, the list goes on and on. How do you replace an All-State linebacker in Brooks Griggs Bell, or the defensive lineman of the year in Carter Layton, or just all these guys. It doesn't matter. Every year we talk about there's several spots, and Gunnar just continues to just, the next guy steps in and does a really good job, and the next thing you know, they're playing deep into December. Quarterback spot, obviously, this has been a battle as well. You have two seniors, and Preston Tarpley and Dylan Tokars. Again, it could be a thing where they both get to play. They both played at the position last year and got experience because, again, a lot of their games were so lopsided that Overman didn't have to do a whole heck of a lot in the second half for a lot of these games. So the silver lining to that, obviously, is you have guys taking over who have experience. And again, it could be a situation where they both play in non-district before they settle on a guy. The interesting thing to it is, of course, they're not just Dylan Tokars is not just a quarterback. He's also a really good receiver in the slot. So the best alignment may be Tarpley at quarterback and Tokars at receiver, so he can change a game that way. Because he has that ability. But whoever wins the battle or gets a majority of the playing time, again, has all these weapons around him. Brock Body returns in the backfield as the main running threat. He had over 800 yards on 135 carries, 8 touchdowns there. Some other guys that obviously are going to carry the ball: Hayden Farrell, Major Thornhill. Those were guys that chipped in last year on that side of the ball as well. And then at receiver, again, you've got guys last year, who filled in for some guys, but behind the Lembergs and behind the main sort, the Jace Martins of the world, the guys who did a lot of the heavy lifting and filled in really well at the complementary roles, are going to take on more responsibility. A guy like Boston Standridge, who had to step in because of injuries last year. And Mitchell Gage is a guy who's back, who was off to a really good start, and then towards ACL right before district started. So obviously he's a guy that was slated to be a starter, be a key guy last year, and unfortunately ended up getting hurt. Colin Peacock will contribute as well. He unfortunately is going to enter the season injured. But whenever he comes back, he's obviously a threat every time he touches the ball. A guy who's committed to Baylor, and unfortunately, injured, got injured twice, breaking his collarbone twice last year. So he was limited as well. But if those two guys are back, you could basically say they're replacing, the top two guys, and they could be just as good, or close to it. And it's almost like there is no drop off, from the group that was there last year. And again, on defense, their defense has been so, you can't say, they've won and had all the success based on one side of the ball or the other, because both sides have just been, outstanding, when it comes to producing results. And last year, no exception for this defense. 7 shutouts, 5 of them came in a row. They held 11 of the 16 opponents to single digits. In a 9-game stretch as part of the 5 consecutive shutouts. In 9 games, they allowed just 3 touchdowns. So they are really good, and we mentioned obviously some of the guys that they lost, but they have a bunch of guys back. Major Thornhill was first team All-State, was the defensive MVP of the title game. Farrell's back; those 2 guys will be involved up front. Linebacker's going to be probably the most interesting of these positions on that side of the ball, just because of they lose Griggs Bell. They also graduated a couple of all-district linebackers in Marshall Majors and Alex Puga. But there's always guys to fill in. Cam Doty is a senior who was first team all-district at safety. He's going to move up a level. And and as Coach Fizzell told me, the way things have gone, at Gunner is, just because you're on the bench, as a second teamer or a third teamer, or just doing special teams or whatever, you just have to wait. You just got to wait your turn, and that's kind of been the case for, a lot of guys here. You get one game, or you get 1 year, or maybe two to start, and you, like I said, you just slide right in and you have a great season, and it just so happened you were stuck behind a great guy who's been stuck behind a great guy, and it's just kind of been the way things have rolled there, and that's a testament to the program, that no matter when you get a chance to play, the people that play seem to make the most of those opportunities. So, but linebacker is obviously one where there was a lot of turnover, so that's obviously going to be an issue. And then, with Peacock sidelined, obviously I think everybody assumes he's definitely going to be healthy unless something happens before then, for the playoffs. But obviously, losing him in the secondary, in the short term is going to be a situation where that'll open the door for maybe somebody else to step in, join Gage, Benji Rodriguez. Benji Rodriguez was one of those guys last year as a sophomore who, we said kind of came out of nowhere because, he was down on the depth chart and there were guys in front of him, and, he had one of the biggest plays of the season, with an interception return for a touchdown against Jacksboro, who ended up turning out to be their toughest competition in the playoffs. That really changed that game when it looked like Jacksboro was going to go blow for blow with them. And here was this guy that nobody kind of knew about because he's a sophomore behind all these upperclassmen, and ended up making some big plays down the stretch. And so who knows who takes advantage of some extra snaps, because of the fact that Peacock's out for a little bit, or some other guys that, they want to try to limit them to being on one-way guys because of maybe some depth issues at certain spots. So, but all in all, I think obviously, Gunner's gonna probably be Gunner, and they've been our last team standing most of the last decade, and there's obviously a really good chance that that's the case. And like I said, they're gonna take on Houston Kincaid, and we'll see what that brings at 7:30 on Friday at Gunner. Last couple games here. Still at the 3A level, we've got the Howe Bulldogs going to Boyd. This is going to be a 7 o'clock game on Friday. It was at 7:30, and they moved the time up to 7. This is an interesting game for both sides. Obviously, you have Howe with a new coach. Andrew Harvey takes over, elevated from defensive coordinator. And Howe's coming off a 3-7 season. 2 years ago they made the playoffs. Had a winning record at 6-5. Last year injuries really hurt them, especially at the quarterback spot. When your quarterback gets hurt, basically in your first game and doesn't really end up being a quarterback anymore. Tried to play a couple, Cooper Jones tried to play another game or two, but at a different spot, and it just didn't. Things kind of snowballed from there. By the end they're playing multiple freshmen just because of the injuries and having to move people around, and so it didn't go. The momentum was unable to carry over. From that, you have a winning record, you make the playoffs after going 0-10 and 0-10. You move down in that realignment, you think things are going well, and then the injuries just were a problem, and you have a chance to get some early momentum. You're facing a Boyd team that went 1-9, and their only win was against Pilot Point, who didn't win a game. So you have somebody's going to get a win here, and somebody's going to be very happy to get a win, just because of the struggles that have happened recently. You look at how they're going to go with a young quarterback. It's one of those things where you could have probably gone with him early. You don't want to go with a freshman, literally in the first or second week of the season because of just the the lack of inexperience and trying to get adjusted to the high school level in general or just high school in general. So Howe kept Ryland Strong on the JV for a good majority of the year. He, got a late opportunity to play at the varsity level, and so he at least got that under his belt. But it's going to be a young guy at quarterback. They do have some other guys who are going to look to contribute. Garrett Rogers is going to take over at running back, who's a junior. Braden Ulmer's the top receiver coming back. He kind of did it all last year, whether it was rushing the ball, receiving the ball. A really good utility player for them. Was named second team all district. So it's going to be interesting to see. They finished last in the district. It's a little bit of a different district. But this is one of those early games you kind of see, okay, how do they fare? How do they handle with a new coach that they do know, but now he's in charge. And so that's going to be interesting with Howe going on the road to Boyd at 7:00 on Friday night. And the last 3A team that we'll talk about is SNS. They're going up into Oklahoma to play Comanche. They have a new coach as well. Dan Pike takes over there. And SNS is coming off an 0-10 season. Obviously, things did not go well for them last year. They struggled offensively. This is another group. We talk about a lot of young kids, a lot of inexperience. There's not a lot of seniors on this roster. I think there's 3, maybe 4. So a lot of changes. Obviously, when you have a new coaching staff come in and taking over a situation with a winless opponent, you don't have a lot to go on off of last year because guys moving around, that sort of thing, playing different positions. But again, this is another early interesting matchup because you have a team that's playing another team in Comanche that went 2-8 last year. They compete at the 2A level in Oklahoma. I'm not that well versed in Oklahoma classifications and what that means enrollment wise. But again, you have two teams that are going to go into this one thinking, hey, we've got a chance to win. So it's an early sort of measuring stick for any progress that we've seen for SNS. Of note, because they are playing an Oklahoma team. This is the 4th time that SNS is playing a team from Oklahoma. The last time they played somebody outside of the state was in 2001 when they beat Medill. And so an interesting little road trip for them. And again, it may be worth it if they're able to to show a little bit. Again, going into the season, I think it's going to be I think the biggest thing is progress. When you're 0-10, there is nowhere to go but up. And I think SNS has a non-district schedule to maybe kind of to get some confidence, maybe get a win or two, or who knows, what that may hold, and then feel good about where they are when they get into district play. In a very competitive and good district with Gunner and Bells at the top. But it should be an interesting start. Like I said, for both of these teams, and we'll see what SNS looks like as they go to Comanche up in Oklahoma at 7:30 on Friday night. The other 2A teams that are playing, kicking off their season, a familiar matchup. White Wright is hosting Clarksville in the Battle of the Tigers. This is a matchup. They have played each other now for the 7th straight season. Another realignment, another scenario where these teams say, hey, you want to play week 1? And they both agree, and here we go. White Wright has won the last 3, including last year 26-20 in overtime. Clarksville has not had a winning record since 2018. They went 2-7 last year. White Wright went 2-8. So obviously White Wright won this game last year, and then their only other win was against SNS. They won 7-6 in that game, and that was the first year under new head coach Blake Yancey. I think with Whitewright, again, it was a group where there were some injuries. You had, obviously, you were starting a freshman quarterback. You were running an entirely new system, because it's wing T based as opposed to what they were running. And so I think obviously that was the growing pains of year one in a new system and a new coach and some new players. I obviously, as we mentioned before, Easton Helgren is transferring over from Bells. He had a big season there that was good enough to be an all-state guy, scoring 20, running for 25 touchdowns, running for almost 1,800 yards. So obviously that should help, depending on how things shake out. Once they get into district play, it's a very competitive district, and so. But I think they view being able to take a step or two forward, compete for a playoff spot. I think that's doable. In that, competing for a playoff spot in that district is probably doable. But again, this is another opening game where you have two teams that feel like they're on maybe at the same level or we're better than the other team, and it's a chance for us to get some early success and build on that. And so we'll see which Tiger team leaves Whitewright with a win on Friday at 7:30. It's been an interesting series between these two, and last year was basically as close as you could get going to overtime. And we'll see if Whitewright's able to kick off their season with a win when they host Clarksville. And the last game to talk about is another rematch. As Tom Bean is playing at Cumbie. These teams played the last couple years as well. Last year, Tom Bean won 48-22. And Tom Bean is trying to win its opening game for the third straight year. They haven't done that since 2003 to 2005. And this is going to be an interesting year for Tom Bean. Last year they go 6-4. First winning season since 2008. But unfortunately, because of the sanctions from the UIL from a couple years earlier, they were banned from the playoffs for 2 years. The first year of that punishment didn't matter. They went 0-for in district, so they weren't in position to make the playoffs anyway. This past year, obviously, it did affect them. They tied for third place in the district. They would have gone to the playoffs had they been eligible, but they weren't. And the one thing that Coach Fex told me before the season was, we're ignoring, that situation. We're going to play and prove that we are a playoff team, that we would have earned a spot, regardless. And they did that. And they, like I said, they put together the best season in 15 years. And a lot of these pieces are back. I think the expectation, obviously, is that they are going to make the playoffs. They were essentially a playoff team last year. There are some tweaks. Bobby Rogers, who was the quarterback last year, is shifting to running back. Donnie Hooten is going to take over as the quarterback, putting two really good athletes in the backfield there. But again, this is a group that did not have a lot of seniors last year. They did have some key ones. McKay Young was the district defensive lineman of the year, or was the district lineman of the year. Branson Ashlock came back from injury and was second team all district as an H-back and a linebacker. CJ Richter was another defensive lineman who got all district honors. But there it was a lot of underclassmen, a lot of juniors and sophomores that were a huge part of this last year. So the backfield, very athletic, receiver, a lot of the same guys: Brody Pearson, Garrett Kelly, McGuire Poole, and Hagan Darney were some guys that contributed last year. Dyson Ferris is somebody that's going to contribute as well. I think outside of losing McKay Young, a lot of the offensive, the rest of the offensive line is back. And if they weren't full starters, they got playing time. Rogers was the district's defensive player of the year on defense. He was the defensive player of the year on defense at linebacker, excuse me. And they've got a lot of guys back at a lot of positions. So again, it's going to be fun in this district. Tioga's in that district. Nakona's in that district. Alfred's in that district. It's very competitive. But I don't think there's any doubt that Tom Bean's going to be in the mix and be able to go to the playoffs and get to experience that this year. They have so many guys back, and again, they've got they're going to open with a team that they barely beat 2 years ago. It was a close game in the end, and they were able to make some plays on both sides of the ball to get that win when they were searching for something in that season coming off a bad year the year before just to get some confidence, and they were able to get that. They were able to get that confidence in the non-district, but they weren't able to put it together in district. And then last year, they beat Cumbie, really badly, and it kind of set the tone for, like I said, for a 6-4 season, best season since 2008. And I think again, big things are expected. I think they may sneak up on some people just because nobody remembered. If you looked at the playoffs, they weren't in it because of the fact that they couldn't. So maybe when you kind of think of the playoff teams in this district, you don't think of Tom Bean because they weren't one. But I think they're going to be it this year, and we'll see what they do when they go to Cumbie on a Friday night. So that's a look at week 1 and everybody's sort of season. This will probably be the longest podcast just because of that. Like I said, once we get into the rhythm, we'll recap the previous week. We'll look at the week ahead, and we'll talk about all the stuff that's going on for our Texoma teams. So I appreciate you tuning in. It's going to be another great season. So again, every Wednesday, check it out. It's on the website, heralddemocrat.com. It'll be on social media, on our Facebook, and on my Twitter page. So be sure to give it a listen. And thanks for tuning in to the Herald Democrat Sports Podcast.